Hi there, Skid Evenstani, CEO of OneWire. Welcome to Open Door. Today we're going to do something very different. We're actually going to interview Brad Richards, the alternate captain of the New York Rangers. He's also won the Stanley Cup and was elected Most Valuable Player. What's the difference between Brad and a CEO of a major company? You're going to learn not much. He's an incredibly impressive guy. You're going to learn a lot. Let's go see what he's up to. Brad, cannot thank you enough for having me over today. Really appreciate it. Before we begin, would love to talk to you a little bit about where you grew up and what it was like, during your childhood.
I grew up in a small town, Murray Harbor, Prince Edward Island, the east coast of Canada. It's actually a little lobster fishing community on the in the Northumberland Strait, in the Atlantic Ocean area. My dad's a lobster fisherman. A lot of his friends, a lot of my family members. That was the industry growing up.
At what point, though, in your life did you sort of sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to go for it and become part of the NHL?
Well, I think there's probably two different moments. One was I left home at 14 in 9th grade because of hockey, and I was able to go to a private school in Western Canada that was known for getting a U.S. scholarship, NCAA scholarship, and at that time, that's kind of, being from a small town, that was kind of the goal. And then before I got the chance to go to college, I ended up turning pro and entering, playing major junior and entering the draft as I turned 18.
Let's talk about winning the Stanley Cup. Okay, what was that moment like?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate. I don't have a family yet. I hope someday that'll all come true, and I'm sure that'll be the biggest thing for me. But so far in my life, there's nothing that can top that. To go through, kind of a 3-year, 4-year period where we were building a team to get into a chance to be able to compete for the Stanley Cup, and then to finally go through that last year where everything was firing on all cylinders. It's hard to explain, but it's already been 10 years, and you still have friendships, and we'll walk together forever on that team, and that's what's really neat about that. That there's, no one can ever take that from you. Well,
they can't take that, and they can't take the fact that you were made the MVP, which is pretty spectacular as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that stuff is, when you're going through that run, you're just trying to do what you can to help the team, and I was fortunate enough to get on a little bit of a roll there. Obviously, the main goal was lifting the Stanley Cup.
2006, you played on the Canadian team. What was it like representing your country, and how's that different than representing a team on the NHL?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to represent Canada a few times, and then the Olympics in Olympics in 06, World Cup in 04. We actually won on home soil, and then got to play in Olympics. It was a little disappointing we didn't bring home. In Canada, you got to bring home the gold or nothing else, and unfortunately we lost to Russia, and that's a big rivalry. But still a great experience. The difference between, there's nothing like putting on your sweater for your country. Don't get me wrong, but when you're only together for 2 weeks, it doesn't have the same passion it does as your NHL team, where you're together with the guys for a full year, or sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
What's it like being a professional athlete and having to deal with the business front?
Yeah, well, the NHL now is a huge business, and even since I get in the league, things have changed so much. And we have to try to, as players, we've had to try to. I've been through 2 lockouts now with the owners, trying to grow the game globally, trying to grow it more in North America. And we've had some rule changes. Interaction with fans, different things you do during the season in your respective towns where you play to try to get more involvement and branding and marketing it. And I think ever since the multimedia or whatever, social media and all that stuff has come out, a lot of players have taken to that, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or websites, to try to grow individually in their team and get more fans involved. I think it's really reached out. Get a lot more kids now that can, aren't going to stay up every night and watch the games, but they can watch highlights or they can interact with you somehow on social media. And I think that's the biggest change I've seen in the business of hockey since I've been around.
When I was a kid, my idols were Arnie Brown, Brad Park, Raj Gilbert, Eddie Jockman, New York Rangers. That's when Jockman didn't wear a helmet or a mask. Those were my idols. Who are your idols today?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, it was Wayne Gretzky. It was always an idol in Canada, no matter what. But Joe Sakic, who played for the Colorado Avalanche, was a guy I really looked up to, and fortunately got to play with him on Team Canada's a couple times, and turned out to be even better than I thought, and which is a nice surprise.
What are some of the overall themes that you've learned as a player from some of the people you idolize, and what are you trying to pass on?
I think the biggest thing I always, my leaders when I was young and when I was fortunate enough to win, it was the passion and the fun they still had for the game. Even our captain was 41 years old when he retired, but he still was out there every day having a blast. And I've seen players where it's not like that, and their game suffers, or they're just not having as much fun, and they might retire early, or who knows how it all works out. There's only 700 of us in the world, so to be able to do this for a living, perform in front of here in New York and MSG, you got to kind of really savor it and bring that fun, youthful passion to the game every day. What
advice would you give coaches out there?
The good coaches, when you're winning and when things are going good, everybody feels like they have a job, a role, no matter if it's an offensive role or defensive role or a face-off or whatever it is. If you can make them think that that's the most important thing that night, I think it gets everybody involved, and it just makes for a better chemistry on that team.
You've given back a lot. That's been a very important part of who Brad Richards is. Can you talk a little bit about your charities?
Yeah, I think, growing up, looking up to some of the players I mentioned earlier, they've always been involved in their communities, whether where you grew up or where you play, and I tried to do both. In Tampa, very fortunate to work with the team and people there that we started Richie's Rascals program, which brought children with cancer and their families to games in a suite, and we'd meet them after. It was just a way to get them out of the house or away from some of the pressures and things they're thinking about, and have a night where they can just enjoy some hockey and some pizza and stuff like that. So that was a big program, and it really caught on in Tampa. I did a little bit in Dallas also, and we're trying to get that going here in New York. We've started this year already, bringing some families. So that's a big part of it. And then back home, I had a golf tournament for 8 years for Children's Wish and autism. Most of the stuff is always, with children and the hospitals. I was unfortunately had a good friend and first cousin pass away from a brain tumor at an early age, and we were pretty close. I was 9 years old when he passed away. So it's just always been part of the, my thinking if I ever get a chance to do stuff. Obviously, with what I do and how my name can help, I'm fortunate enough to be able to help, and I love doing that.
Well, Brad, you've certainly done a lot, not only for your charities, but for the game of hockey, for kids, for your fellow teammates. You are a phenomenal player. You're a great Ranger, and I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Thank you.